My name is Christina Good. I'm from California State University Fullerton, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to our alum panel. I think the idea here is, again, to have a little bit of discussion following the panel, so I've asked each of them to try to stay right at 10 minutes so that we can have some table discussion afterwards, because that seems to be very productive. So to go straight into it, the first person I'm going to introduce is Uvia, and Uvia is from UT El Paso.
There we go. Oh, whoops. Okay, so the first question is, who am I? Okay, most of you guys already know that I'm an undergraduate student, under the impression that I am a student.
You're going to either speak into this or
Okay.
hold it.
Okay. So I'm a Hispanic mechanical engineering student from the University of Texas at El Paso. And I emphasize on the fact that I am Hispanic because Hispanic culture grew up, we believe firmly in, things like La Llorona, El Cucuy, or, the risk of touching the floor barefoot and, catching a cold. Or, the medical remedies that Sprite give us when we have, tummy aches. Things like that is what makes Hispanics, the culture that we are. So I grew up in a very Mexican-American household. And because of that, we have this sense of unity. And due to that sense of unity, our mothers are usually very on mama bear mode. They never want to, let go of their cubs. They're always so afraid to let us go, cut that umbilical cord and let us, roam around. So because of that, we are usually very limited to go out and achieve our goals. So being that said, I am the youngest of three. I am the first one to actually try to achieve a 4-year institution education. And that's because my mother, she is my biggest influence in this, since she was the first one to actually try to achieve some sort of college education, whether it be a 2-year institution and associates in cosmetology, completely different from what I'm doing, right? But my father, he only went as far as a GED. So I had her as an example, and I figured, she's a female, she's Hispanic. Why can't I do it? I kept asking myself, why can't I do it? If she can do it, I sure can too. So my brother and my sister, they went through the artistic route. I am the odd one out. I decided to go through what my father has, made me grow with, and that's orthotics and prosthetic, being an orthotics and prosthetic assistant. So I want to build on that, but I figured, what can I do to build on that? So I thought about it, gave it some thought, and figured, biomechanics and bioengineering. You see, UTEP doesn't have those programs for bachelor degrees. So my first thought was, okay, bio. I'll do the bio section of it, biology. So I figured I'll take some courses at the community college in El Paso, and we'll see from there. And that's when I started applying to the LSAM program. And they asked me such a broad question, and it was really beautiful because they asked, what is your interest in research? It was very broad. I had no idea. I kind of gave my feedback. I gave my ideas of what I wanted to do in the future, but I didn't know really what route to take. And it wasn't until Ariana Arciero Pino actually messaged me and said, you know what? Well, congratulations, you've been accepted to the program. What are your ideas? What do you want to do? And I told her, you know what? I want to grow into what my father has taught me, but I don't know what it means to go through that. And she tells me, well, what do you want to do? Design? Do you want to make? I was like, yeah, I want to build. I want to be able to be one of those engineers or people who create something out of nothing. And that's when she guides me to the WM Keck Center of 3D Innovation. So she tells me, oh, there's this lab that does additive manufacturing. Maybe you're interested in that. Additive manufacturing, what is that? What is that? So I Googled it, and I found out that it's 3D printing. I go to their facilities. They give me a tour. I see my mentor. I speak to him. I have a great connection with him. And that's where everything starts sparking and rolling. And I started getting more informed into the projects, but not only it's such a diverse group of people that work in that laboratory that not only do I come in contact with mechanical engineers, but I also come in contact with electrical engineers, metallurgical science, as well as computer sciences. So, saying that, I had this huge diverse group, and I had been doing research there in the center for the past 3 years. Well, first of all, it was the first 2 years before I decided to take that step abroad. And it wasn't until one of the ASAM conferences when I decided to take that step abroad, because there was one student in the panel, Veronica Salvia, who made me question again what my mother questioned me. If she can do it, why can't I? And I went ahead and did that step. After that conference, I went straight to my computer and I decided to apply. I decided to pick EPFL, l'École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, the Federal Polytechnical School of Lausanne in Switzerland. And I decided to work in the LIS lab because I wanted to see what my degree, my background had to provide more than just design and what I had of knowledge in additive manufacturing. How could I apply that? And I figured, I want to take the robotics route. I want to see and get that technology or that information of robotics as well as additive manufacturing and apply it into what could potentially be a master's degree in biomechanics or biomedical. So finally, I get accepted to the program. I go ahead and start making preparations to go to Switzerland. And one of the first things that I noticed was traveling abroad. It was rather easy because I have that cultural background between being able to travel freely from El Paso to Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, which is Mexico. So I know how to actually adapt from one culture, American culture, to a Mexican culture. In one culture, you're eating burgers, and the other one, you're just across the border, you're eating tacos, burritos, flautas, everything. You have the works. So you already know, the big difference. You're so used to Tex-Mex, but you cross the border and you have actual salsa. You know that was homemade, and you know the difference. Only you would know, right? So I had that cultural background. So that actually helped me adapt easily to Lausanne, to Switzerland, and whether it be either the French or the fact that in Mexican culture, the fact that their sentence structure is pretty much the same, that was really easy for me. That was really easy for me to adapt. Not only that, but colleague Rob, you mentioned on the first day that the importance of being able to feel identified in a group in a new country. And finding those people. Well, I found my people. Whether it be in the campus or outside of the campus, there was Latinos everywhere in Europe. And that was amazing to me because I figured, no, I'm not going to find my people. I'm going to feel alone. No. And that's what a student, and one of the characteristics a student needs to have. They have to have that confidence. They have to be able to put themselves in a very uncomfortable situation because it's not only till they hit rock bottom where they can swim up. And they need to be able to do that. Have that confidence, have that drive. So I went ahead and jumped into the lab. And one of the biggest differences that I saw between, the American educational system versus your European or my lab, let's narrow it down to my lab, I was really intimidated in the fact that, I have these students in my lab or colleagues, they're the same age or a year older, and they're already doing their master's program. I was like, oh man, whoa, I'm behind. I felt behind. I literally felt, hindered. But then I felt influenced by them. Because yet again, I asked myself, they can do it, why can't I? So once again, I finally had a sense of what I want to do with my future, and that is, pursue a graduate degree, pursue a doctorate degree. Because I figured if they can do it, why can't I? So that was one of the biggest things. And challenges, outside of the lab, of course, there's a language barrier, but it creates this confidence in you because you're not afraid anymore to ask questions. You're not afraid to go up to someone. Of course, you have to familiarize with the culture, the country, the language before you travel because, how are you going to communicate? You have to be mature about it and step up to the plate and do some research about the country itself, not only your project. So that was one of the biggest things. And of course, in the lab also, you need to have a sense of where you're coming from, the background that you have in research, and that connection that you create with your mentor. So communication with your mentor is key in all of this because they are the ones who are actually tailoring the project to you to what degree that you can actually take it. because you had to give them some aspect of what your background is, and they have to understand that. You know, your capabilities, you need to let them know. So if you're so afraid to tell them, hey, you know what, I don't know anything about computer science. I don't know anything about electrical engineering. You need to have the confidence to tell them and ask them that. Because if you don't, you're going to be struggling even worse while you're doing the project. And for instance, in my lab, everybody was electrical and computer science. Of course, I felt intimidated. I was mechanical. But I wasn't going to let that hinder me, because I went there with my knowledge of additive manufacturing, and essentially that's what I did in the project that I was doing there. We were using this new software platform that they were going to use for their students, where they could create robots, or using additive manufacturing technology as a skeleton of these set morphologies that students could create themselves, using sensors and motors. So again, it was a component application that actually interests me. The fact that we can combine both additive manufacturing as well as components at once and simplify the build and not let it hinder us, or we can build on that. So that was one of the biggest components in communication. But also what this program actually allows us to do even more beyond that is making that connection, bridging classroom with the experience. And that's one of the biggest things, because in classroom setting, we only understand the theory. It's a very abstract thing. And some of us are visual learners. I've come to notice that. I'm a visual learner. If I hear someone, tensile testing, elastic modulus, what is that? What is that? I question myself always, what is that? And it's not until you're in a lab setting and you need to get your hands dirty and be able to question, okay, well, what type of testing does this take? What happens here? What's the behavior of materials? What's the behavior of everything as a component at once? You have to see that. Also, of course, the conferences. They allow us to become professionals. And that is key here, because we need to start rather young and be able to build up on those professional skills. Because in the end, it's who you know rather than what you know. And you need to be able to go ahead and feel comfortable and talk to, people who are, reach to those who are older than you, or, they have more experience than you, and ask them, hey, how can I better myself? What step do I need to take after this? Because they're the ones that have the experience. For instance, like in my family, like I said, none of them are from engineering or STEM background. But I can go ahead and ask one of you guys. And you guys will actually, give me some steps. Will show me around. Will be able to put my feet in the water. And I thank you guys for that. Also, networking skills, presentation skills, resume, poster building, presentations, being able to talk to you guys right now, not fear, Of course, I was nervous to death, but, I got up here and I was able to talk to you guys. We need to refine that on students. We need to apply that on students, and because of programs like yours, we are able to do that. Because you guys are giving us the shot that we need. And finally, global thinking. How can we connect all of this back into a marketplace or the future that we hold, or whether it be faculty or international experience? It allows us to be more diverse. It allows us to be more flexible. It allows us to be more open-minded and being able to not fear to have that uncomfortable moment when we face it. It allows us to be better problem thinkers, better problem solvers. And with that, I would like to leave this presentation with a final note, and that's a quote from American author Mark Twain. The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. And thanks to these programs and what you guys do, we're a step further to find out why. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Hard act to follow. But I'm going to ask someone to do that. So, so come on up.
I'm Nick Means. I'm from Oklahoma State University. I am from a small town in Texas called Pilot Point. I would give you money right now if any of you could tell me where that was. No? Okay. In Texas. Somewhere in Texas. So it's programs like these that I wish. After, I'll give you. It's programs like these that really are influential for students. Because I wish I had heard that talk before I went to France. Because then I would have known what to do. I had no idea what to do. So I'm a little bit of a different case. So to start off, give you a little bit of my history. I start off as a junior in Oklahoma State, and a friend essentially decides to drag me to an LSAMP meeting because it's cool, it's fun, it'll be really beneficial for me, yada, yada, yada. And so I'm like, okay. I knew I kind of wanted to be in science, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And he dragged me there, literally pulled me by the ear to get me to go. And that's where I met Kay. And she, I guess, saw something in me. I don't know. But she took me into her office, and she said, "What do you plan on doing for this summer?" I don't know. Maybe working at home, working at a state park. It's what I've done for the past 2 years. Like, no. You are going to get an internship to see if this is what you really want to do. I'm like, well, I'm trying to make up every excuse. It's April, all the deadlines have passed for these REUs. No one's going to take me. No one would take me. But Kay said, well, you know what? Just try. And so she helped me. She got on the phone to several universities, Missouri, Kansas, all of course, like I thought, were no's. They had already passed their deadlines. They had already met their students. But we called one at the University of Georgia. And all of a sudden, they just said, we just happen to have a student drop out today. If you can get me all of your application materials for the program in by this afternoon at 5, we will consider your application. And so I'm freaking out because I didn't think this could happen. So I'm in my immunology class trying to get all my resume and letters of recommendation together so I can send to Georgia. And that's how I got my first internship. So Kay still saw something in me that I didn't see, even through the internship in Georgia, which led me to her in wanting to select me for my French internship. I ended up spending 6 months in Grenoble at the University Joseph Fourier, and I was working in an electrochemistry lab. So another background about me is that I'm a microbiology major. Electrochemistry isn't really my forte. But my mentor that was first set up for me in the LSAT program did chemistry and did electrochemistry. I knew I wanted to minor in chemistry, but I wasn't really sure about electrochemistry. And Gen Chem 2, whenever we hit the electrochemistry section, I ignored it because I thought I will never use this in my life. Well, wasn't that a shock? So we get there, and we go through the whole process, and I am on the plane to leave. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I never thought this would happen again. Little old me from Pilot Point, Texas, half Hispanic. Also, I can't speak Spanish, don't hold it against me. But I never thought this could happen to me. Why would I be selected to go? And we get there. We fly into Brussels. That's when my first culture shock kicks in. I'm no longer in the United States. I don't speak French. Most people in that Brussels airport didn't speak English. So luckily, me and the friend that I had kind of got our way through to where we got onto a train from the Brussels airport to Paris and then down to Grenoble. And if those of you who have been to Europe, you're supposed to validate the little tickets for the trains. Yeah, we didn't know that. So somehow, miraculously, we got from Brussels to Grenoble without a validated ticket. So that was fun. But that was my first culture shock. You can ask Kay, within the first night of us arriving in Grenoble, it's Sunday. Nothing is open. Nothing is open. I'm freaking out. I don't have Wi-Fi. So I have to go to the local McDonald's in order to get Wi-Fi. And then I'm texting Kay saying, I'm about taking all this money that I have put in my shoe, and I'm going to use it to buy a plane ticket back. I was ready to go home. That was my first culture shock. And you know, something like my colleague said would have been very beneficial for me. And it's programs like this that need to be happening to get students prepared for a study abroad experience, especially if it's for a research internship. You know, it's not just taking your classes, go travel on the weekend, come back, have your nice English speaking classes again. It's not like that, and I'm sure they can attest to it. So everything gets okay. I'm slowly starting to calm down. Kay's trying to talk me into not coming home. And, you know, the lab research starts. And I realize I am by far the youngest one. All of the people in my lab are PhD students, so they're 27-ish. You know, when I was 22 at the time, I'm still very young compared to them. So I felt really out of place. But like she said, if they can do this, why can't I? Because there were people from Brazil, from India. We had a girl from Israel for a little bit. If they can all do this, why can't I? And it's something that I didn't really see in myself until I had to look for it. You know, if it came down to me having to look for it or me getting on a plane back home, it was a very close decision. But I decided that I needed to look for it. And so the lab research starts, and I'm thankful because our lab is so large and internationally driven, that the lab speaks English. It was fantastic. Although I did have to tone down the little bit of a southern accent that I do have because sometimes they couldn't understand me. But it was really cool in the fact that now I'm starting to get in the feel for things. The research has started, and while it's not really my forte, you know, I thought about both the research and the culture like this. You need to just get immersed in it if you really want to experience it. While I had hesitations about electrochemistry, you know what? I just did it the best that I could. I read some of the literature that they were putting out. I read some of the literature that they have cited in previous publications to get immersed into what they were wanting to do. And so what we were wanting to do is essentially create a biofuel cell. That was our end goal. This biofuel cell can be used anywhere from GPS tracking technology in goals, anywhere from GPS tracking technology to maybe even powering a pacemaker in the future. And so I thought, you know, while I'm a microbiologist and electrochemistry isn't my thing, I do want to go into medical research. And what better way, you know, finding a fuel cell that can power a pacemaker. That's fantastic. And so that was my little key to really just get immersed into the whole project. And so I'm going through, and the best part I think about the program was, even though it was a little bit tedious at the time, was the constant reports that I had to write. And it was a communication back to my mentor in the United States. Because the unique thing about our project is that it was a collaboration effort between my mentor here at Oklahoma State and my mentor there at Joseph Fourier. So in our biofuel cell, it's essentially a fuel cell with two parts. One half of it came from France, one half of it came from Oklahoma State. We put them together, and then that's how we created the biofuel cell, with me being the liaison of my mentor's lab over there. So it was fantastic, and the communication was key. You know, in the reports that I had to write, it was give progress about what you have done. And so that motivated me, like, well, I don't have anything yet, and it's Wednesday, so I need to get my I need to get in gear. And every time the mentors would look at it and they would ask me, well, what do you think? Where do you think this project should go? And so I would give my little insight, and then they would use their knowledge to be like, okay, from what we've already done, we can maybe lean toward this way, figure it out, and we can see where we're going. And so that went on for the process of 6 months. And then another moment that I had was at the international workshop that we had in Grenoble towards July-ish. And there's a whole bunch of other American students there at this international workshop. There's French, all people from all over the world. But there's also students from MIT, Pennsylvania, all of these top-notch American universities. And I had one of those other moments. Here's little old me from Pilot Point, Texas, from Oklahoma State University, and I'm presenting right next to a student from MIT. And on my other side, a person from Pennsylvania. I never thought that would happen. Not even in my dreams of me reaching my goals did I think I would be next to an MIT and a Pennsylvania student. It just didn't happen. But it's programs like this that can make it happen. And it's programs like this that need to always happen to make sure that their students get the success, especially if they don't have the opportunity that an MIT or a Pennsylvania student does. Because if you put a driven student in the program like this, there's no telling how far that they will go. They will go just as far as an MIT student. So that was another one of those moments. I just never thought it would happen. And then I decided whenever I came back, getting a publication was something very important to me. I really wanted to get this. I knew I wanted to go into graduate school, and eventually I want to be a department head of a micro department of my own. And to do that, I have to go through all the ranks of faculty, which I know is terrible. But to do that, every publication will help. And so still to this day, I am working with my mentors over in France, as well as OSU, to get this publication out. We're in the process of writing it and getting it submitted. And so a thing that I do want to say, if students do go abroad, I do want to say that it's not just the time you're over there. It is the time that you come back and that you're willing to still keep in contact with them, maybe hound them, to just make sure that this publication gets out. Because without a publication, what is the research? If no one knows about your work, why do it? And so that's been my biggest thing since coming back. So that's really it. That's my story. I thank everybody in this room because this is the reason why I went. This program has developed me into a person that I never thought I could be. When I was a junior in Oklahoma State, I never thought I would be up here talking in front of all of you, but I am. A little half Hispanic, can't speak Spanish boy from Pilot Point, Texas, from Oklahoma State University. But I'm here, and I'm proud of it. And so thank you.
We put too much emphasis on technology, not realizing the technology is only as good as the person that put the information into it. And if you're not technology savvy, that technology is not your best friend. However, it's been a while since I've been a student, but I was a LS AMP student out in Louisiana. For me, LAMP, how can I put this? LAMP is sort of like my fairy godparent, if you will. Going through high school, college wasn't an option for us in New Orleans, Louisiana. We wasn't taught to go to college. You was to graduate, get a skill, go off into the tourist industry or some other construction type of field in that respect. So my high school years was very lengthy. I spent about 5 years in high school. I walked across the stage with a 0.67 GPA cumulative. So when I left high school, of course, I still have this mentality, that was thrust upon me. I started believing it, Maybe college is too much for me, Why should I go to a university that's gonna look down on me or give me a hard time? I started to take on that personality, that mentality, So playing around, and I got dared into applying at Delgado Community College. And of course, with the same mentality and the same, background, I go there with the same attitude. So I leave there with a 1.2 GPA. I can't go back. That's the only reason why I left. I couldn't get financial aid, right? So, and this is one of the reasons why I'm a strong advocate for non-traditional students. 10 years later, just by chance, I was talking with a friend of mine, and he was on his way to deliver a paper that he was to give to one of his instructors. He asked me to come along for that particular time. Just by chance, I walked in the office of Dr. Joseph Omajola at Southern University in New Orleans. I'm standing in front of this guy with slippers, jogging pants, and a tank top. And he's asking me, what am I studying in school? Well, of course I give him, the story that I just gave you guys. And he's like, well, I didn't ask you that. What do you plan on studying here at Southern University, as a student? Well, I said, well, I'm not a student. I'm just here with my friend here. He was going to drop some papers off. He said, well, I didn't ask you that. Now I'm kind of like, a little aggravated, but at this point I'm humble, because I'm looking at degrees behind him and he's focused on one, So he asked me what I was into, and I told him that, well, for right now, I'm learning computers. So I want to build my own automated, home in the future. And so he turned around and he pointed at a math degree. He said, see that degree right there? I can do that plus. So as the conversation goes on, he's constantly asking me about my attendance at Southern University. And I'm constantly reminding him I have 1.2 GPA. There's no way possible any university is going to accept me. I said, well, you never know unless you apply. So, all right, cool. Let's see what you're seeing right now, So I go and apply, and by this time, I didn't know that Southern University was open enrollment. And let me take a moment to say this. Not only did we were not taught to go to college, I didn't even know what an HBCU was up until this point. I'm 30 years old. I have no idea what an HBCU is. Born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. So it's not by chance that we are underrepresented. So I fill out the application, I get accepted, and of course now it's time to pay for tuition. So of course I go back to him and I let him know that, well, how I'm going to pay for this. And he's telling me about financial aid. And I say, well, Dr. Omajola, remember I told you that, Delgado can't go back, denied financial aid? Well, I didn't ask you that. Why not apply, see what happens? So I apply for financial aid, send in my FAFSA. I get my response back, of course, denied. Now I'm big-chested. I told you, and I'm gonna show you, not realizing how that really sound at that moment, But that's how I felt, I told you this was what it was. This what happened. Why should I move forward? So I gave him the paper and he said, well, this is all we need. What you mean, this is all we need? He said, yes, this is all we need right now. So did you get your schedule straightened out? Did you apply, did you register for classes? I'm like, well, Dr. Omajola, I mean, I can't pay for, I barely found $20 to pay for the application. So I didn't ask you that. So now I'm really pissed now. So he sits me down, and I give him my information. So he goes to tapping stuff into the computer, and he prints it out. And he say, here, all you gotta do now is go to class. Well, Dr. O, I didn't pay for anything yet. I said, don't worry about that. It's your job to go to class right now. Okay. So I go home and I tell my friend about what just happened. And he's telling me, well, dummy, go to class. So, semester haven't started yet because it's still bothering me. I haven't paid the tuition. How is this going to work out? I'm sitting in the class and, I haven't even thought about books yet. So I go to the office and he say, you're really concerned about this, aren't you? I said, well, Dr. O, wouldn't you? So he said, come walk with me, take a walk with me. So he walks me down to the registrar's office, and he's just talking about his time as when he was a little boy, and I'm like, what does that have to do with now? So we get there, and I give the cashier my information, and she pulls up my account and everything, and he signs his name. I'm like, that's legal? And so, like I said, I didn't know nothing about LS-AMP at this time. All this is new to me. I'm not sure if he knew how much I knew about it or what. I didn't know at this point. So it was a miscommunication at that point. So now you say, well, once again, just go to class right now. We understand what your GPA is right now. We're not concerned about that right now. Go to class. Okay, I'm a little bit more relaxed now because the tuition is paid. But now, first day of class, and they're talking about books. Well, if you go to the bookstore, books are not that, not that cheap. So I tell my friend this, and she said, dummy, go tell Dr. O. So I go and talk with Dr. Omajola, and he says, well, what books you need? So he makes a phone call down to the bookstore, tell him that there's a student on the way. I'm like, man, what is he doing here? So I get down there, and they waiting on me. I give them my schedule. She brings me the books, and I'm waiting on her to give me this big old, total. And she said, here, Dr. Omajola said, come back and, no, he said, I want to get it right. She said, Dr. Omajola told me to tell you to go to class. Now, at this point, I'm kind of like, okay, let me see what he's talking about now. So I go to class. I start my schooling there. And so since this is the spring semester, he's asking me about where I'm going for the summer. And I'm like, what you mean where I'm going for the summer? I'm gonna be at home, wait for the fall semester. He said, no, what are you gonna be doing your research at your internship? I don't know nothing about this. So I'm sit back down with him again and say, because maybe he didn't hear me the first time. So I let him know again, my GPA from high school, my GPA from Delgado. I'm just not starting back. We are 2 weeks into the spring semester, and you're asking me about the summer? So, of course, springtime, as you all know, deadlines passed and whatnot. And so he said, well, don't worry about it. He has REU at SUNO called PASMAT, and what it is an organization that he created to introduce young kids to the STEM fields. So he puts me, he assigns me to his REU. So first time experience, and he's telling me that he wanted me to write a paper on climatology. I'm a first year physics major, Physics 101, and you want me to talk about climatology. At this point, I can't even pronounce climatology, let alone discuss it. But of course, with his help and the help of others, I was able to get through that summer. And of course, this we're talking about 2005 now. And so the fall of 2005, semester starts August 27th. We got to leave New Orleans. So I go to, if anyone from down south, a hurricane, we get them quite frequently. So it's not really a big major issue. So when they say the hurricane coming, some of us give what's called hurricane parties, which means that we're going to ride it out. We're going to stay home, party. We're not going to let this hurricane dampen our spirits. Me, studying climatology that summer, I'm going to see y'all Monday. Because they was talking about it's going through Florida. And I'm like, well, what I know about fronts and how it interacts with these hurricanes is not fast enough. They did not believe me. Okay, I'm going to see y'all Monday. So I left. About 2 days early, so I ain't see no traffic, no nothing. So I'm out here in Woodville, Mississippi, about 30 minutes away from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm out here, and I'm thinking I'm just out here for the weekend. I bought just enough clothes just for that weekend. So I wake up Sunday morning, no lights. We don't know nothing about nothing. A week later, we still have no lights out here in Woodville, Mississippi. So I have no idea what's going on in New Orleans, Louisiana at this point. So I get a phone call, and they're telling me that we can't go back to New Orleans right now. And I'm like, why? And they asked me, have I been watching the news? I'm like, we have no lights out here in Mississippi. So of course I see what's going on, and so we get that process going and whatnot. So the same friend that helped me along the first time, he's out in Missouri, and he tells me that Southern and Baton Rouge is accepting students from SUNO. All right, so now we're like midway through the semester, and I'm like, well, there's no way possible I can get in, catch up, and move forward. So I called Dr. Omajola and to see, if this was so. And he's like, well, yes, it is so. He said, okay, so who do I talk to? He said, go and talk to Dr. Diola Bagayoko. All right, cool. And then what? Go to class. All right, so I do that, and I get to SUBR, and it was just as welcoming as it was at SUNO. Dr. Bagayoko opened his arms, he welcomed me in, and I went from a 1.2. By the time I graduated, I was at a 3.7. And so during my tenure at Southern University, I was president of the Society of Physics Students. By this time, I'm a math major. The reason why I switched over, because the more physics I was learning, seemed as if the more math I was learning, it's like I was talking mathematics. So I say, well, I'm not gonna do this. I'd rather, study philosophy of physics. I didn't understand what I was talking about. I said, well, no matter what you do in physics, you gotta speak mathematical terms. So I'd rather study these definitions, and then we work out these word problems later. See, y'all caught that. Not too many people caught that, because physics is nothing more than just word problems and mathematics. That's all it is, So this is my tenure as an LSM scholar, and that's how important it is to me, this program, and that's why I'm a strong proponent of non-traditional students, because we lose a lot of gifted talent, because of these criteria, if you will, and I really did. I had a well good speech about that, but of course, like I said, I couldn't have it because the PowerPoints and whatnot. But I say that to say that to looking at it from a mentor's point of view, as I graduated, I started off. Well, I digressed again. That's why, you need a PowerPoint. But outside of being president of the Society of Physics Students, I also was a docent with LIGO as an undergraduate. Coming from New Orleans, I had no idea what an SEC was. So Science Education Center, what is it? Let's go check it out. Okay, I can do this. But they was more of an educational. I wanted to be in more of a research thing. But being a docent kind of pushed me, in, if you will, because speaking with young kids and my peers and seeing that they're understanding what I'm saying, because sometimes when you sit in front of a class and you have this instructor and they know what they know so much, whereas they can't really articulate it to you in a way that you can understand it. Well, as a docent, I found that the way I articulated the information, not only the tours and the kids that came along, but my peers started to understand the mechanisms behind the science that we was doing at LIGO. So when I graduated as an undergraduate, you know what? I'm going to try teaching. Secondary teaching. So I get there and I get into a 4th grade class. I respect the position enough to know I shouldn't be there. I did very well, mind you, but like I said, I respect the position enough to know I shouldn't be there. So I say, well, I need to get some more letters behind my name. So I applied for the graduate program at Southern University. Now I'm sitting here filling my paperwork out, and another mentor walks through the door. Just so happened to be walking through the door at this time. And he asked me, what am I doing? I told him that, well, I'm sitting here and I'm filling my application out because I want to get my master's and so far and get my PhD. He said, well, what you doing for the semester? I said, well, right now I'm filling my application out. And he said, well, okay. What he did was he referred me to be an adjunct instructor of mathematics. And I said, well, that's something like a graduate student assistant. He said, no, you're going to be an actual instructor. So you sure about that? But I don't have a math. He said, I didn't ask you that. Now I got Dr. Umajola in the back of my head now. Why not apply? So I applied. I get the position. I got 9 hours graduate classes. I have 7 classes that I'm teaching. Yes, let's see how that worked out for you, right? In one of those classes, mind you, I have 77 students in one class of those 7. You see, at Southern University, they have what's called SUSLA, is a system. So what they did was, SUSLA from Shreveport had a satellite campus on Southern University's campus. And so it was their first semester. So me being a math instructor, I was the only math instructor they had hired at that point. So I had all the classes, being a new graduate student. So of course, quickly I found out that I respect the position enough to know I don't need that many classes. So I reduced my workload down to four classes. But I say during my tenure as an instructor, I found myself mentoring my students. And I tell them, you're my kids now. And I treat them as such, And I found myself, favoring the sciences more. If you wasn't studying math or physics, you wasn't studying science. All right. You wasn't studying science. But I say that to say that when I tell my story to my classes, that helped them, wake them up. Because the classes that I was teaching were developmental classes. I like to call them the first steps in the mathematical sequence. There's no such thing as developmental classes. There's a sequence in every discipline that you're going to study. It just so happens some people take an exam and now they're able to skip certain levels of that sequence. So I found myself converting, English majors to math majors, converting law school students to biology majors, to science majors. Here it is, I have a student coming to a 4-year university for business. I don't disagree with that, but you don't go to no 4-year university for business. You go to for a discipline. And this is how I would speak to my students, But like I say, when I catch them in the hallway, even the ones I failed, they'll shake my hand and let them know that the things that I discussed with them, the way I presented the information to them, helped them not only in their academic lives, but also in their personal lives, because they had no idea that they could do this too, right? Now, and I know I have time, but when it comes to the research aspect of it, I tell them that, follow your dreams. And I always tell them what my dream was. And I always tell them, fall back on that story. So I told them on my last semester, I said, you know what, you guys? I'm going to study gravitational waves. They all laughed at me. I say, one of these days, you're going to see my name in one of your books. And of course, they still led it about 15 minutes, So I applied for the position. The position came available, and I'm looking at the requirements, and I'm like, there's no way possible. I have nothing dictates that I should be applying for this position. But I have Dr. Omojola in the back of my head. Why not apply? See what happens. So I applied, and of course I get the position. A year later, I'm on duty when we detect the first gravitational wave in history. And in the back of my head, why not apply? See what happens. And that's why I'm a strong proponent of non-traditional students. Non-traditional students can help you with recruitment as well as retention. It's so much I wanted to say to you guys, but I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll welcome your questions and comments later.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Well, my name's Tyler Rust. I'm a member of the Oglala Sioux tribe in South Dakota on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and I'm an undergraduate student for the next 3 weeks at least at South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, and I will graduate with a degree in geology. And today I want to talk about steps that I believe students can take to be successful in international research. From my own personal experience, we've been very successful at the School of Mines in increasing the number of Native American graduates in science and engineering. And the way we've done that is by providing a bridge between the tribal colleges and the state institutions. So if students want to get an engineering degree, they need to go to an institution that is ABET accredited. And one of the pitfalls that they face is being a bit unprepared for a state institution and going from a tribal college to a state institution. So in our Bridge program, we provide lots of mentoring and REU program for them in the summer and throughout the school year, as well as offering certain classes at the tribal college that would be equivalent to what they would take at the state institution. And I have participated in this for the past several years as a participant and as a mentor. And the last 2 semesters, I also did a study abroad experience in Turkey. And I feel that, taking these incremental steps would prepare someone to do a international research with publishable results. So the first few steps, of course, get the student into the state institution, do the REUs, and then perhaps a shorter term international experience with less pressure, get them used to being abroad and accustomed to culture shock, have a passport, be able to navigate airports, things like that. And for me, I hadn't considered international research as part of my graduate studies until I did this, and I feel very comfortable now, and it's something I would like to pursue. So we spoke a lot about funding, and these are some of the funding options I received to do my abroad experience. A lot of scholarships may not be necessarily specifically for study abroad, but funds can be used towards that. I was a Udall scholar, and they were thrilled for me to use my funds toward international studies. ACES and ExxonMobil provided me a scholarship specifically for field geology. NASA, Mensa, my tribe was in great support of this, and they'll be featuring me in a publication. My school provided a National Science Foundation scholarship. There was even a scholarship at the school in Turkey that was specifically for Native Americans. And of course, LSAMP funded me also. One I'd like to focus on that I don't believe we've spoken about is the Benjamin Gilman International Scholarship. And this one has a great deal of flexibility. The student proposes their own project, where they want to go, what school they want to attend, and the scholarship is given to them just in their bank account. And so there's flexibility, so whatever might arise while they're abroad, then they have money for that. And it is administered by the Institution for International Education, just like the Fulbright. And this scholarship is somewhat targeted towards underrepresented people. You must be receiving a federal Pell Grant to be eligible for this. So if you have a high need for financial support from the government, then you're eligible for this. And you need to be receiving academic credit for what you're doing, but you can do it for 4 weeks. You can do something very brief, get your feet in the water, test it out, and as long as you're not going places that the U.S. wouldn't feel comfortable with you going. So we spoke a lot about mentors, and I can attest that mentors are very valuable, if not essential to this. I would not have been able to do this without my mentors, and I was lucky enough to have two Turkish-born citizens that work at my institution. Dr. Nuri Uzunlar, he organized and led my field studies when I first went to Turkey. This was geologic field science with a research component, collecting data, analyzing data, producing reports, maps. He handled everything, all the logistics, lodging, transportation, travel. Basically, all I needed to do was show up and do the work, and he was right there. But that was just for 6 weeks. So while I was there with Nuri, I applied to college. At this point, while I was there with him, I had received word that I was going to be a Gilman Scholar, and then I went to this school in Istanbul, and I applied to college there, and they accepted me. Another mentor I had at the School of Mines is Zeynep Baran, and she was born and raised in Istanbul, and she provided me connections at the school and people she knew, gave me a place to stay briefly. I stayed at in her bedroom when she went to college. And let me tell you, if you truly want to experience the food from another culture, get someone's mother to cook for you. or grandma. So this really reduced my fears and anxieties, both for me and for my family. My family was nervous for this, and they were much more comfortable, okay, he has someone there with him, and he knows people, he has connections there, so they were a bit more relaxed about that. But I did encounter some challenges. Once I was there, Turkey was added to the U.S. travel warning list, which was, like I mentioned with the Gilman, they don't want you to study in a country that has that, but I was there, this happened. They were in the middle of an election season, which can tend to divide a country. They were in the middle of a war, so there was a safety concern there. One thing you can do, and I believe you should do this just in general, register with the embassy. I was in contact with the American consulate, who was wonderful. I mean, he invited me to his home for Thanksgiving dinner, and we were in close contact. He would email me about once a week, letting me know what areas I should avoid, and provided a lot of general practices to increase your safety, avoid crowds, demonstrations, protests. You could stay in the university or stay in your lab, and monitor local media, make sure you know what's going on. The culture, language, religion was a great shock for me. It was drastically different. I knew basically nothing about Islam. I didn't know the Turkish language, which was very difficult. But I think studying these things before you go, trying to learn the language before you get there, learn about the religion, culture, any little thing to make sure you don't offend anybody, and just be very humble, that they've welcomed you into their country. And I did experience some homesickness, but we live in this technologically advanced world where, I could call anybody back home, text, email, Skype. Although I do believe Skype made me a bit more homesick, because I could see back home and kind of wanted to go back. So overall, it really increased my independence. I was there all alone after the first 6 weeks. And when I had Thanksgiving dinner at the consulate, that was the first time I'd seen or spoken to an American in months. So I was all by myself, and it was good training for me to be more independent. And I don't feel anxious. I'm eager to go to other countries now. I have a passport. I know how to navigate airports. I know all this, and I'm more comfortable in foreign countries. And I want to do international research for a doctorate. I want to do that now. I didn't even consider that before. And I did manage to complete a significant amount of academic credit while I was there, just for the summer and fall semesters. So I know people worry about falling behind in their academic track by doing these things, but you can get a lot of credit. So with that, I'm again, thank you for having me here. I strongly support the goals of this symposium, and I want to be able to help provide information like this, steps that we can take, because any student going abroad is an ambassador for their country. And because of their significance in this country, both past, present, and forever in the future, I believe Native Americans must be ambassadors for the United States of America. Thank you.
Well, as you can see, we definitely spent a little longer on that, but there was absolutely no way I was going to pull any of those people off this stage. Amazing stories. I particularly value some of the things Tyler just said, because I think those baby steps are important. And I think many of people here have commented on the difficulty sometimes of making that transition. And so maybe that first experience is more of a guided cohort-based one. Get them used to it and then send them off. I thought that was amazing information. We too have gone to a country where there was a war, or at least a military coup, and the value of that far surpassed the fear, because there's a lot to learn about those sorts of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to run outside, get your coffee, get your bagel, and come back to the tables. And then we're going to ask the panelists to take some questions, and we're just going to wing it from there on out. Right, Randy?
Yep. We've got 3 more presentations.
Right. So
Use the time we need to have the discussion you want to have with these panelists, and for them, allow them to make the comments they'd like to make,
Yeah.
including more about the international aspects of gravity waves.
and yeah. And I know some of you are leaving at 10 o'clock, so if you can give our panelists a round of applause. That we get your response recorded, and we're going to see how long this takes. So any questions for the panel? I know that, of course.
Tell us about the international, what happened as you saw the chirp, and anything you can say about how that became international and the importance of international global thinking.
We have to understand what LIGO is. LIGO is a collaboration of institutions around the world. So it's not just LIGO is searching for gravitational wave. The whole science community is searching for these waves. And what it is we have venues set up around in Germany, Italy, around the world to help in that search. So when the interferometer detects something, or detects a trip, if you will, it analyzes the data and sends out emails, it sends out alerts that something that we were looking for just past our detectors. So when that happens, the alert goes out. So at that point, we have what's called hands off, and what that means that no one is able to touch the interferometer for any reason. So when the alerts went out, Marco out in Germany called, let them to verify that both interferometers are locked in and observing. Then that's pretty much what the situation is. Once something gets detected, verify the status of the interferometers, leave the instrument alone for the next hour or so, and let it collect as much data as possible. Now, once the data is collected, the data is then sent out to various locations for analysis. And so we have a team in various parts of the world, if you will, and hopefully in the next few months or years we have another site out in India. But once the data analysis team collects the data, it identifies if in fact that that particular signal did come through, and that pretty much sums it up. Now, as far as on location in the control room, the only indication that we would get from our point of view would be a flashing light up on the AS port. However, though, that light is going to be so fast and so small, you may or may not see it. If you wasn't looking at that point, at that moment, you're not going to see it. But you can always go back in the data that's been collected and see that, yes, something did in essence come through, But, yeah, but it's collaboration of all people from all around the world that comes together and somehow it works.
Sorry.
So I want to actually say that this was a great panel. Heard a lot of different stories, and I think just hearing you guys talk, I think you guys are the future leaders of society, if you will. One thing that I wanted to ask you is, you guys are young and you're up to date with mobile technology and all the social media. So how are you spreading your stories around and telling your peers that, hey, look, research is important, and you don't have to follow the path and that people have followed before you, like in construction or working at a fast food joint over the summer. And you don't have to be scared, hearing a microbiologist do electrochemistry is, absolutely incredible. How do you spread your story, and how are you using social media to sort of tell people that, hey, go do science and do research?
One of the requirements for the summer program for LSAT, for Tech, is that we had to post blogs on Facebook and kind of tell our story, what our experience was both in the lab. Well, of course, whether it be restrictions in the lab that we couldn't really tell a lot of detail, but we could also say, hey, what did you do this weekend? I kind of help students to have that view that they can do it too. It's not that hard. Sure, cultural shock maybe a little bit, can be a little bit frightening, but it kind of gives them that influence, and it allows them to just be a little bit more open-minded about it all. And also, of course, we serve as representatives of the program, so we need to speak. Whether it be colleagues and stuff, like I've mentioned to some of you before, that it's sometimes frustrating for me to understand why students don't reach the programs, or whether it be a lab and be like, hey, can I volunteer with you, for a little bit of time, see what projects you guys are working on, stuff. Like that can sometimes be a little bit frustrating to me, because they have to knock on that door. They have to knock on that door, in order to see what's on the other side.
Bring it. Sure. Why not? Yeah, sure.
I guess for me,
As you wish.
so in the weekly reports that I had to send, I essentially had two email groups. So in the report itself was a research lab component, giving detailed data about what I had found over the past week, as well as a cultural component, and so where I had gone. And so for those reports, I actually had two separate email groups. I had one for all the required people, Dr. Rand, Kay Porter, every one of my mentors, all of these people. My next group was all of my friends who were always asking what I was doing. While they were still more interested in where I was visiting, I still included the scientific portion so they could read it. And those of them who knew something of electrochemistry could just get something out of it and see actually what I was doing in the lab Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday. And then now, while I don't really do much of the social media aspect in terms of a sharing blog or anything, but I have been working on our micro department website, and I built it from a student's perspective. What questions would I have asked about a research opportunity that I should have gotten maybe as a freshman, but I didn't get until I links straight to the NSF in their REU search engine. Gives you a description about what it is and how to do these internships and that you can do it. And links to scholarship programs, links to programs like LSAM. And that's how I share my perspective, is that I want to help out future students that with the information that I hoped I would have had as a freshman.
Maybe this is something that LSCME could feature on their website, student perspectives.
I haven't. I'm not that into the social media per se. However, I am a strong advocate for the STEM majors, STEM fields, and since I've been an LSM scholar, I'm probably one of the biggest advertisers in Louisiana right now. Especially amongst my peers. The folks of my age group. So in that respect, I would say since I first met Dr. Omajola, I've always discussed my experiences throughout. Since I've been now working with LIGO as a detector operator, I can talk about certain aspects of what I do up to a certain extent, up to a certain point. Understand what this is new research in the science and whatnot. So any development that may arise, there's a time element to that, if you will. But as far as the research aspect, as far as my career goes and whatnot, I share that with everyone I meet on the word of mouth. Every now and then I may comment on someone, but as far as my own social media, I don't have that, only for family purposes. I don't have a Facebook for friends. Only people on my Facebook will be family, and of course, they pretty much know, and they also my biggest advertisers. I find now, so I can't go no without saying, "Oh, you're Lucretia's son, Lucretia's brother, you're Jerry's son, you're Carolyn's nephew." And I'm like, "Well, who are you?" and it's like, but that's how my story get out. And also people from my university, as well as my mentors, my advisors, and previous instructors that I've had, as well as my students. I was told that my students are bragging on me on their social media. So I have a lot of people that I work with who are friends with some of my students. And so I see a lot of my articles on my co-workers on Facebook because of my students.
Just as a heads up.
I utilize Facebook as a sort of photo blog, and I enrolled in a class on photography in Istanbul. I purchased a camera and
social media is a good start, but I mean, I would love to find someone who could fund for these four to go around the country talking and tell your story, because that's the only way we're going to get people to sign on, to be able to talk with you, to meet you, and understand that they too need that confidence that you guys managed to get. I'm a little frustrated. This is more a comment. I'm a little frustrated. But how do you do that? There's something really valuable we've got in school. Even William, I shamelessly used the Higgs boson to go around talking to promote STEM all around the world, because it caught people's attention. That'll go away after a while. People forget about it. Oh, you did that. You got something brand new. It's got the world's attention. Use it. I don't know how to help you, but I'd love to see you guys do much more of this.
Let them discern.
Yeah.
Now, in that respect, I do have a passion to do that. I do have a desire to do that. I don't know how. Let me say that. I tell my students that don't just speak. If you don't know something, say that I don't know. This is the first for me, and so I'm still kind of trying to take it all in. Folks telling me, you should be all excited. I'm like, okay. Because like I said, for me, as my cohort just said, being in this position was unforeseeable at one point. And as you take baby steps, at one point taking those baby steps, that next baby step is explosive. And it's like, what do you do at this point? How do you, who do you contact? In order to try and get that story out. Even though, like I say, I have speak with others, from the community and everything. They tell me the same thing. You have a powerful story. I get that, but I'm still at that point. In which way? What are these venues? In a sense, social media is one thing, but it's time consuming. Tweeting and whatnot. With me, I rather sit like in a setting such as this and speak to a crowd. That way I can tell my stories to you guys or whoever the audience is, and they can expand that way. Now I'm not saying that social media is not a great venue, but what I do is tedious already. It's already time consuming. So I don't, even with that, it still also needs some assistance. So more or less, it's learning on how to get the stories out. As one of my instructors told me, there's book options and whatnot. I'm not a book option. I'm just an operator. But like they tell me, it's not the fact that you're an operator, but or the fact that you have these skills is that the whole thing, the story itself, considering, you weren't even supposed to get across that stage at high school. You sitting before me with a master's in physics. Are you serious? So when I hear that, that's the first time I even said it out loud, to be honest with you. But when I hear that from other people, it's kind of overwhelming. It's kind of humbling in a sense, especially from the older generation in our community, because in their eyesight, when they see, when they look at the news, they see a different picture. So in that respect, I do feel a need, especially looking at my peers and those that's coming, the generations coming after me, millennials, if you will. I do see there's a need, and when I talk to them, I see that it does impact them a lot. But at the end of the day, it's more of a, how and a where. And of course, it requires funding.
We do have people from SACNAS, American Chemical Society, Abercrombs, LSCME. Maybe this is a topic that should be brought up at some of these conferences. ERN had a a session on international research a few years ago, and that was very well attended, but disappeared the next year. So maybe these are things we should be pushing more for.
And I think, maybe for me, I feel I can get a better connection with people when I see them face to face. And unfortunately, nowadays, not very many people are going to be willing to meet with students face to face in terms of just talking about maybe how you got there, what's your story. A lot of people are just so focused on trying to get everything done that they need to. And they need to be focused on that. But it's harder for the student to approach someone who has all of these letters behind their name. Because now they know that they're in a completely different world than what they are. And they can't see the bridge that could be built. And so I think it helps, even just with programs like this, to have some students or recently graduated students who don't necessarily have that many letters or behind their name. That way they can see maybe there is some sort of intermediate between an undergraduate at point A and a doctor at point Z. There's a whole lot of steps in between there, and they just can't see that connection. But if you have some people here in the middle who are willing to meet with them and talk with them about the journey, then I think that's when you can get more of a connection with the people. I feel social media, there's so much nonsense that goes on through social media, Facebook, Twitter, that even if we were to be blogging almost every day, then it would just become some sort of white background noise to them. Because that's how, I think that's how people think today. They just kind of scroll through, oh, that might be interesting, cool, and then continue scrolling to see what else is going on. And so I think it's just getting a more personal connection with them, and it starts, with finding the students that you either have in your lab or that colleagues that have, and getting them to be willing to share a story with these younger students, and then you can get a more personal connection, and maybe then we can start to see a trend, and maybe these younger students really wanting to pursue science.
Can we make this the last question?
Do you guys have any near-peer mentors? Because essentially what I think you're getting at, Nick, is the idea of becoming near-peer mentors. So before you guys traveled abroad, or before you took your next step, were there folks who weren't necessarily the PIs in this room, but folks that might have been closer in age in the process that served as kind of near-peer guides?
Well, for instance, in the lab that I work in, the professor that takes care of the lab, he's usually out doing business. And so we're left with undergraduate students who actually mentor me into getting the skills that I need to do mechanical testing or writing an abstract, revising my poster, whether it be a cover letter. We have, in my lab we have master's and doctorate students who help us throughout the process. And they're flexible enough to sort of guide us as well. But just to go a little bit back on the previous comment, I agree with the fact that we need that face-to-face contact with students, because of personal experience, like I had mentioned before. It took that panel in the conference, Veronica Salvia, for me to actually step up to the plate. It took her to actually inspire me, and hear from her that hey, it's doable. And just like you said with social media, the message will be lost. The message that we're trying to convey might get lost. So we do need to push forward into what we had mentioned in the first day of the conference, which is invitation. We need to invite those students. We need to bring them in. But it requires that invitation because it's sort of a reassurance to us that we're capable of doing it.
But I think the invitation needs to come from you as
Right.
opposed to from us. So maybe us working with you,
Yeah.
you guys actually reaching the students, then the students will actually listen.
Exactly. We need that part.
I'm going to have to stop this. I think we could talk for a lot longer with these fantastic students, but one more time, round of applause.